I was continuing my studies on liver differentiation, and I decided to find out whether the inductive interactions which take place between the two initial components of the hepatic tissue, that is, the mesenchyme and the endoderm, could take place when the two were derived from different species. I thus associated the hepatic mesenchyme from quail with the endoderm prehepatocytes of chick in organotypic culture. A lobe of liver tissue developed, but I noticed that mesenchymal cells had a large nucleolus, a character normally present in hepatocyte, but not in mesenchymal cells. In fact, I found that having a large nucleolus is a characteristic of all quail nuclei. In this species, the nucleolus is very large because it results from the association of the nucleolar A and P with a large mass of heterochromatin. I thus thought of using this genetic stable marker of quail cells to devise a method that would allow us to follow the movements and fate of embryonic cells in ovo. Since quail and chick cells can easily be recognized by the structure of their nucleus, the idea was to replace, for example, in the chick embryo, the group of cells of interest by their equivalent coming from a stage-matched quail embryo or vice versa, thus constructing chimeras. With my students, we applied this technique to the development of the nervous system, primarily the neural crest, and also to the brain itself, which is the site of intense cell movement when it develops. The neural crest is a rather discrete transitory structure, whose component cells migrate throughout the embryo and invade all its tissues. Its role in embryogenesis was largely ignored in the early 70s, especially in higher forms of vertebrates. Another developing system in which cell migrations play an important role is hematopoiesis. We used the quail-chick system to illuminate several issues in this field. Until 1970, my publications were generally sent to national journals and were written in the French language. Fortunately, some of my best results had been published in English in either British or American journals. In 1972, I had the chance to give a series of lectures in Canadian universities. It was the occasion to present my cell labeling technique. In fact, this trip was decisive, since from then on, I was invited to give talks at meetings or present seminars in research centers. From that time on, I decided to publish all my papers in English. My work was certainly recognized in the United States before it was in France. The next important step in my career happened when Etienne Wolf reached the compulsory retirement age in 1975. I was appointed as director of the Institute of Embryology that he had created 20 years earlier. I would like here to recall the memory of Professor Jim Ebert, who was an influential scientist in the field of developmental biology. He was consulted at that time, and it is on his advice that I was considered for that position. I got to know him better later on when he invited me as Lilly Fellow to the Woods Hole Marine Biology Station, of which he was the director. I wish to acknowledge his help, as well as that of Professor François Jacob, for their precious and constant friendship and support. I have been the director of the Institut, which I renamed Institut d'Embryologie Cellulaire et Moléculaire, for 25 years. I became professor at the Collège de France in 1988 and was elected as a member of the French Academy in 1982. Both these institutions were, and still are, imposing temples of pure machismo. The Collège de France, created in 1530 by King François I, in reaction against the dogmatism and clericalism of the Sorbonne, as a place for freedom of thought and innovation did not admit women until 1973, when Madame Jacqueline de Romilly, a highly distinguished Hellenist, was elected. 9 years later, in 1982, Françoise Héritier-Auger, in the intellectual filiation of Claude Lévi-Strauss, succeeded him in the chaire d'études comparées des sociétés africaines. In 1988, I was the third woman to be a member of this rather exceptional institution. Even now, only 3 of 52 professors are women. In the Académie des Sciences, only 9 of the 200 members are women. In 2000, I had to retire from my chair at the Collège de France, but fortunately, I was allowed to continue to work in the laboratory with a small group of people. I had the honor of being elected as the permanent secretary of the Académie des Sciences in 2000, and I share my time between laboratory and academy work. It is my pleasure to mention that in the 1970s and 1980s, I had the privilege of visiting this university. It was first during a very cold winter in the late 1970s when I spent 1 month working on a project with Ed Reich, who was professor here at that time. Subsequently, I visited twice yearly for the neuroscience research program that was headed by Jerry Edelman, and in 1985, I delivered a Harvey lecture in this auditorium. All these are very warm memories for me. During a career that extended over 3.5 decades, I had the immense pleasure of initiating a number of young people to scientific research. Several were women, and many are brilliant. I am happy to say that they have not been exposed to the same difficulties, at least overtly, as those encountered by my generation, which was the first to enter a world that had before been almost exclusively reserved to men. Difficulties still exist for them, however. In particular, as it was mentioned by Justice O'Connor, if, at the same time, they nurture the highly legitimate aspiration to raise a family. Nevertheless, the number of highly competent women in science has now enormously increased because they do both work and family. Since research is a passion that makes its lovers able to move mountains. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Nicole. Could I ask Justice O'Connor to join us whilst I read the citation and then she presents the prize. On this, the 27th day of October 2004, the Rockefeller University honors you, Nicole Le Doran, as the first recipient of the Pearl Meister Greengard Prize, an international award recognizing outstanding women in biomedical science. Beginning your scientific career at a time when few women entered the field, you helped to launch a revolution in developmental biology. Your pioneering studies elucidated the formation of key structures in the nervous system, laying a foundation for research on developmental disorders of the brain. In elegant and meticulous experiments, you traced the journeys that embryonic cells make as they become the tissues of the blood, bone, brain, and immune systems. Through sophisticated analysis of the determinants of embryonic cell fate, your work has provided a crucial link between classical embryology and molecular genetics. As a renowned professor and director of research centres, you have inspired scores of young scientists to explore new directions in developmental biology. Today, in presenting you with the Perlmeister Greengard Prize, we recognise and thank you for your extraordinary scientific acumen, your vital contributions to biomedical understanding, and your continuing distinguished leadership in the international scientific community.
And there really is a prize. It is contained in this leather-bound volume, and it's an enormous honor to present it to you, Dr. Nicole LeDoirin, this Perlmeister Greengard Prize. And on behalf of the very distinguished jury, here it is, and with congratulations from everyone in this room for your wisdom and your talent. Thank you very much.
I would like to tell you, Mrs. O'Connor, how much I have been touched and how much I have been honored that you were present, and how much I appreciated your speech and all the very important things that you said.